Alright, how's it going? So I am putting together my base layer of camo. This is a Invisilay layout blind by Momarsh. I've had it for a while and just kind of getting around to getting jute on it and just kind of getting a base layer to break it up. Obviously, most of the camouflage I'll be putting on here to blend in is going to be all natural stuff. So really, I'm just kind of building a little bit of a base layer with this jute just to help break it up, and then I'll supplement it with natural vegetation. So I got 6 colors here, all different kinds of jute. Basically, all I'm doing is I'm just taking this stuff and just taking a couple strands from each color. So I got some red, this darker green, light green, I'm just kind of, they don't have to be perfect. Just getting them so they're somewhat close. And then some of this stuff. Kind of the biggest pain with this stuff is as you're kind of peeling it apart is just making sure you don't get them all wadded up and stuff, because then it just becomes, as you go through, it just becomes a real pain to like separate this stuff and put it together. All right, so I got this. I said roughly the same size, not a big deal. That's a little much for one, so all I'll do is I'll just kind of mix the strands up in my hand. That, and I can break it into 2 pieces. Okay. And then all it is it's just a simple girth hitch under these straps that Momarsh has put on their blinds, which are super handy. So girth hitch just like that. Like I said, all I'm doing is I'm passing that between the strands and then running it back through itself, just like that. All right, and then just tightening them down so they hang. Super easy. It's just a little time consuming. Not really worried about making any pattern or really any rhyme or reason to it. Obviously, really the more random it is, the better off it is. And again, I'm not going to cover this whole thing in jute. I don't want this thing to be a giant pile of strings, because that's just not a natural look. It's just a base so that when I start applying natural vegetation to this, when we get to our honey spot, it just serves as a little bit of a filler to help break it up a little bit more. That's all it is. Alright, so again, I grabbed probably way too much. Well, I definitely grabbed way too much for one. So I'm just gonna kind of separate that. Make it into 2, that way we reduce some of our picking through the strands. It's easier to pull 6 or 7 strands of each color than as opposed to trying to get just 1 or 2 strands. Missed one, it's fine. Just come back in with it. Secure. Too easy. So I'm starting basically at the bottom. I'm not starting all the way at the bottom. Most of the places I hunt, these legs are going to be folded underneath, and I'll be laying straight on the ground. So I don't necessarily need that very bottom, those very bottom loops to have any jute on them. What I am going to do eventually is, for those cases where I do want the legs up, so I don't have to lay on the ground, I will probably make a kind of like a detachable skirt for it. So I'll make something like this. It'll go around the bottom, so I can take it off and put it back on. And the only reason I'm doing that is just so that, like, all this jute and stuff, I don't necessarily want it sitting on the ground and laying on the ground if it doesn't need to be. Just for the sake of longevity, so it doesn't get all tore up. That's really all it is. getting everything prepped. Duck season's a couple weeks out. Early wood duck teal starts here in a few weeks. I honestly don't know if I'll be using this during early wood duck teal. Most of the stuff that we are hunting during wood duck is back up in the river where the water's pretty stinking deep. So most of the time we're hunting out of a boat or standing on a little bit of hard real estate on a bank somewhere hidden underneath a tree. So layout blind isn't really the ideal solution for wood duck for the type of hunting we do for the most part. So this will be more for once regular duck season comes in and we start hunting the marshes and stuff, where we've actually got land we can stand on. So instead of trying to build these blinds that kind of stick out where we hunt, just because there's not a lot of times where the low water line is, and the tide's out, you can't really get real close to the water, so you end up either building a blind way up in the reeds where you got a long shot pretty much no matter what happens, just because of where you're at with your blind, or you end up building a blind basically in the open, so you just have like a big square blind out in the middle of open, which isn't super effective. So we'll start using these, setting them on the ground, getting real low, and just trying to reduce our signature that way. So we'll see. Hopefully it works out this year. There's no telling. I'm also doing it. We're going on a North Dakota trip this year, so I'm putting it together. We'll be hunting some dry fields up in North Dakota, so we'll put it together there. Obviously we'll be running probably corn stalks and whatever else for natural camo, depending on what kind of fields we're hunting. So we'll be doing that as well. But yeah, that's about it. So I'll just keep doing this all the way around. Start at the bottom, and then I'll go to the next row up, and then I'll just work my way up to the top. And then once it's all done, it should lay in pretty nicely, and should be easy to supplement any sort of other camo I'm going to put on it for natural veg. That's it. Check back in here in a while. Okay, so this is the next day. Alright, so next day. I didn't get it done yesterday. I had some other projects I was working on, so I just didn't get it finished. But I wanted to show you guys some stuff I've been doing. So I got the sides all done, and I did those just like I told you. And then I got started working on the top, and I just didn't want the grass laying straight down. And just because I don't think it would look very natural, so I was trying to come up with some way to make it a little bit better of a 3D effect on the top. So I came up with a way to do that, and I just want to show you guys kind of how I was doing that. Let me show you kind of better close up. So you can see up here where I've got these, they're kind of standing up, right? Instead of just laying flat like the sides. So I figured out a way to kind of get these things to stand up and look more like, like it would be the top of a grass instead of just being laid down. So the way I'm doing that, let's see if I can do this. Is I'm still running the girth hitch, right? So I'm still gonna do all my jute the same way I was before. Still got my pile of all my colors put together, right? So I'm just grabbing a bunch of them, and I'm just peeling them apart and separating them, right? So really all I'm doing is just trying to get the colors mixed, because right now they're just getting kind of big square bundles. So I just do that a few times, almost like shuffling a deck of cards. Just gonna get that stuff kind of mixed in there, so I don't have one big wad of the same color. So doing it, what I'm doing now, right, so the biggest thing with this is we really want to keep these strands for the most part on the same height. It wasn't super important laying them straight down, but when we start doing this, it's a little bit more important because we're not going to feed them all the way through. So if we end up with a bunch of short ones, then we run the risk of basically not securing all of them, so they're going to come apart. Right, so I'm just going to grab a bunch of these. Okay, just like that, about that, thereabouts. Again, not super important. So what I'm going to do with these, get this thing angled so you can see. So what I'm going to do with these is I got my straps, right, some portion on either side, and instead of when I was doing the bottom ones, I was coming from the bottom up, right? So with this, you're going to have to I got to come from the top down. And that just has to do with how that girth hitch is going to end up, right? So I'm going to come from the top down, and I'm going to take these. I'm just going to run them through that girth hitch like I was doing before. Okay, so I'm going to take the whole thing and pass it through. So what I'm going to do now, right? So instead of tightening this down like I was doing on the sides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a zip tie. Okay, so I've got the strings coming through. I'm going to take this zip tie and basically I'm going to zip tie it right here. I'm going to get that thing all the way down to the bottom where those strings are coming through. I'm going to tie it tight, just like that. Alright, I got these little nippers here. I'm just going to cut that zip tie off. Okay? So now what I'm going to do, so now I've got the loop up here, right? It's secured. The bottom piece here, that's secured. That's not going anywhere. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take scissors, my trolley shears. You can use regular scissors, that's fine. And I'm just going to cut the top of this loop. Just like that, alright? And then we can kind of fray these out. Alright, and so now I got this little cool 3D effect up here on the top. And that's what I've just been doing all the way across, and you see it just kind of sticks up like this. And I kind of like the effect. I don't know how durable it's going to be or what it's all going to look like when it's done, but so far I like it. You know, worst case scenario, I'll end up hating it and having to cut it all up. But I like it for now. Hopefully it'll last, and you just kind of fluff them up. You get that nice effect. And again, I'll put some natural vegetation, you know, slide them in among this stuff, and then it should break this thing up really easily. So we'll see. I'm going to finish this up and we'll check back in and see how it looks. Alright, here it is, finished product. Got it all done. Around. So looking pretty good. You see, I don't know if you guys see these or not. So you see these got these little tufts sticking up here. So it's just not laying all flat on the top. It actually kind of sits up. Gives a little bit more of a little more depth, more 3D angle to it. But yep, she's all done. That's what's left right there. That was 7 pounds of jute. I used probably about 5, maybe a little bit more than 5. Just kind of give you an idea of what I used. All right, and that's it.